Before we jump into the main story, let's have a short recap first. There was a hunter named Vincent. That night, he heard a baby crying. He thought that there was a thief who had sneaked into his house. He grabbed his axe to prepare and attack the perpetrator, thinking that it was unlucky for someone to try to steal in a hunter's hut of all places. He wanted to finish everything in a flash, so he tried to open the door, preparing to attack. When he opened the door in the hut, there was nothing in there. He mentioned that ever since he was told they couldn't have a child, he had been hearing phantom sounds. But he was shocked to see a baby that was left alone in there. He grabs the baby and put it near his ears to see if his heart is still beating. His wife, Olina, woke up, asking him if something was wrong due to the commotion. Olina questioned why there was a baby. Mr. Vincent, unsure of how to reply, stated that the child is their baby. At the age of 12, that child's name was Ariane Shirone. Shirone grew up reading books about mages, which he loved. On the other hand, his father, Mr. Ariane Vincent, loved Shirone so much that he didn't mind any gossip about them not having similar features. He loved Shirone as his own, no matter what others may say. Shirone's father brought him to Kreese, a city in the countryside kingdom of Thormia. Shirone was so amazed to see what is in the city for the first time. His father left Shirone in the store of an old man, warning him to wait there and not to go into any shady alleyways or run into a noble. While waiting, Shirone helped the old man but was still asking about magic. The old man told him that he doesn't know that much about magic, and he points at the bookstore saying that place has a lot of books talking about it. Shirone went to the bookstore, stating that he would come back after browsing. However, at the bookstore, the manager swiped his hand away when he tried to grab a book, explaining that he couldn't peruse the books because they were expensive and not meant for peasants. The woman informed him that those books were different from the life books sold in the general store and she don't want Shirone to dirty those books. Shirone saw the man carrying piles of books in a box. He followed that man, wondering if he is a noble and where will he going to put those books. But he was shocked to see that those books were put down in the trash. At that moment, Shirone realized that the book that was his dad giving him came from that place. In Shirone's mind, nobles. I wonder what the difference is between them and me. Was it okay for them, but not me? Then while following the nobles, the guard suddenly grabs Shirone. He said, "Hey kid, this isn't a place where kids like you should be roaming around alone. Beyond this door is an area only a noble can access. Where are you from? Where are your parents?" One of the guards said, "Isn't he kind of suspicious? He doesn't look like a kid that lives in these parts. He is probably an orphan. He might even be an errand boy for bandits." When the guard tells Shirone that he needs him to come with him, Shirone already escapes and hides away from them. While Shirone was picking up his shoes, he left from running away. He heard on the other side of the wall an old man asking what is magic, since that is the topic that he will going to discuss. Hearing the word magic caught the attention of the young boy. Shirone sticks his ear in the wall. The old man asks the students, "What do you think is the most important talent when it comes to magic?" The students answered knowledge, hard work, and money, but the old man told them that no one had the correct answer yet. Hearing that made Shirone start to question, it is not knowledge, money, or hard work. Does one have to be a noble or something? But at that moment, the old man told them that the most important talent when it comes to learning magic is insight. The student asks the old man what is insight. The old man said, "Is there anyone here that doesn't know what 1 + 1 is?" One student replied, "Who wouldn't know that? It is obviously 2. Then the old man asks, "Then can someone explain why it is 2? No student was able to answer that question. The old man said, "That strange feeling you have right now is what is known as insight. There was a time when people didn't know that 1 + 1 is equal to 2. A lot of academics work hard to prove it. But despite not having any concrete evidence or proof, we are able to understand that 1 + 1 equals 2 to right. That is because it is a law that always existed in the world. That is why we don't need to learn it, for we are able to feel and accept the concept. Because magic is also a law that existed in the world from the start, we are able to feel and accept it whole through insight. That is why insight is more accurate than knowledge and faster than hard work." Hearing that made Shirone amaze, he starts to question, become a mage? Will such an opportunity ever present itself to me? Then the old man suddenly said, "That is right, child standing behind the wall. I would like to hear your thoughts." Shirone was shocked. In his mind, he noticed me. Should I run? Or should I answer? I am a mess right now. Who knows what they will do to me? That is when a thought came to Shirone's mind. If I don't climb this wall right now, I will regret it forever. So he tried to climb the wall with his short legs and arms. He saw an old man at the center of the children, and a beautiful place where they are sitting. That old man was actually Murhi Alpheus, the headmaster of the Alpheus Magic Academy, a grade 4 certified mage. The headmaster asks, "Did you come to keep this old man company?" Shirone jumps from the wall excitedly. While Shirone was slowly approaching, the students informed the headmaster that he was a commoner and not a noble. They conveyed to Shirone that he could not enter their space and instructed him to leave. The headmaster laughed and told him that it was okay to go in there. He asked, "What did the old man say that interested you?" Shirone replied, "I want to see magic. I have read it in books, but I have never seen it. It doesn't matter which one you do. Please show me." The children of nobility didn't believe at Shirone that a commoner could read books. The headmaster laughs and told him that it is not difficult to do and he will try to show him a spell that can create wind. The students were excited, but Shirone starts to question after he felt a sudden wind. Then all of them float in the sky through the wind, but as they fall in the faster rate, Shirone could only close his eyes from fear. Shirone was actually floating in the air right now and other students just laughs at him. The headmaster told him that what he saw right now is magic. After that, Shirone asks a question to the headmaster about magic, and Shirone also gives his thoughts about it. The headmaster thinks that Shirone is a brilliant child who tries to obtain the correct information to research it himself. But unfortunately, Shirone is a commoner. The headmaster also shows Shirone the spirit zone by asking one student to enter in it. A magician who enters the zone becomes aware of the outside world in a supernatural capacity and is able to dominate reality in the end. With that, the girl was able to know how many coins was the headmaster was holding. Then Shirone tried to enter the spirit zone himself, and at the end, he only heard all of the sounds. The students laugh at Shirone, saying, "Of course, he will hear sounds if he is standing still." In the headmaster's mind, so he can't do it as expected. The things that happened in the spirit zone are in another dimension. The headmaster pats Shirone's head and says, "Well done. If you keep practicing in the future, you will be able to hear many sounds." While walking away, the headmaster thought that it was regretful that he was a talented child. If Shirone was born a noble and trained at a young age, then would he be able to achieve something similar to these children? For Shirone at that time, while he was climbing back to the wall, he was sweating, thinking that his theorized idea really worked. After trying to enter the spirit dive, Shirone was so high at that time, thinking that he was the world itself. Even it was just in an instant, he felt like he was able to escape his body and become infinite. But while thinking about it while running, he bumped into some random thugs on the streets. At that time, there was a young girl walking. She was somewhat like a noble or someone with a higher status. Her name was Amy. Shirone thought that he could ask help from that girl, but the thugs know this girl. Shirone was beaten down by those thugs while saying some insulting words to Shirone's mother. At that time, Amy told the thugs to be careful not to bruise his face. Amy walks towards Shirone, and to scare him off, Amy told Shirone that they were going to sell him up to the south as a slave. Hearing that made Shirone fear, and tears come out from his eyes, calling his mom and dad. Looking at the face of Shirone made Amy think in her mind, "Why is he like that? I was going to let him go after bullying him a bit. He is not losing his mind, is he?" But suddenly time stops in the whole area. Then Shirone was able to enter his memories from the time the headmaster was showing him wind magic and the time he was able to enter the spirit zone. Then subconsciously Shirone was able to manifest that wind magic, and all of those thugs flew up in the air and then fell down to the ground, making their bodies and bones break from the impact. Seeing that Amy was shocked, she shouted, "Hey you! What the hell are you? Where did you learn magic? How is a commoner able to do that?" But at that time, the noise from it caught the attention of the people in the area. Amy flew away and jumped like a ninja to escape. Shirone was amazed and started to question, how can someone be able to do that? At that time, Shirone thought that no one would listen to what he was going to say, so he also tried to run away. At that time, Shirone realized that the world was too cold. Fast forward, Shirone was able to work in the house of Ogent, who produced state-certified swordsmen for generations. The current family head, Biskov Ogent, is a grade 4 knight, which in short, he is a big shot who commands the city military power. Since Shirone was able to read, he was working at the library to categorize books. When he has time, he plans to read history books which he believes as the core of knowledge. Among 10,000 books, 850 are about history. He plans to read everything in 2 years to achieve his dream, which is to become a mage. But even for him, it was too hard. During his stay in the Ogent family, Ariane Ogent, the youngest son of the Ogent patriarch, told Shirone that they would have a duel, betting their lives on the line. In the end, Shirone won by luck, and they became friends. Shirone was also able to become friends with Ryan's older sister, the court pianist Raina Ogent. Later, the head butler discovered that Shirone and Ryan had become friends when he saw both of them after Shirone visited the Ogent mansion. A commoner befriending a noble could lead to the commoner losing their head if the friendship was revealed. After everything was discovered, the patriarch, who is Ryan's father, expressed his displeasure. They believed that a commoner befriending a noble was akin to leeching on them. The patriarch gives his verdict, and that is the execution of Shirone. Ryan hurriedly ran towards their mansion after hearing the news. Even in the face of death, Shirone still fought for their friendship. At that time, a more rational figure, in contrast to the patriarch, emerged Ryan's grandfather, the former family head, Clump Ogent. He was also Thormia's general and a grade 3 swordsman. With laughter, he remarked that being young is the best, and what a splendid spectacle he witnessed upon his return home. After hearing both sides, Clump Ogent said that he still does not approve because if their friendly relationship continues, rumors will eventually spread, and this might become a weakness for the political opponents to snatch against them. Although there was no execution anymore, he told Shirone to end their friendship. Shirone told them that he could not accept it. Even though he could not see Ryan again, he told them that he was still his friend. Hearing that, Ryan felt ashamed, although he thought that it was a relief that Shirone wasn't going to die. Hearing what Shirone said, felt that abandoning a friend was equivalent to abandoning oneself. Then Ryan raised his sword and pushed it to the ground. He shouted, "I hereby declare, I, Ariane Ogent, the third son of the Ogent family, will become Shirone's sword as of this moment." The origin of the Knight's Oath goes back to the founding of the Thormia Kingdom. The Knight's Oath. In return for pledging to become the single sword wielded by their master, they are granted the status of a nobleman. That, right there, was the origin of the Knight's Oath and the birth of nobility. Therefore, breaking the Knight's Oath meant they would become someone less respected than a rabid dog. That is why when Ryan do that made all of his family members, including the butler, shock. Because of that, there is no choice for Clump Ogent but to acknowledge Shirone as a qualified person. He could only ask Shirone to take care of his grandson. Shirone thanks Ryan's grandfather for his approval. After that, Ryan was enrolled into Swordsmanship Academy and they separated their ways as Shirone was trying to enter Alpheus Magic Academy with the help of Ryan's grandfather. At that time, Clump Ogent approached his friend, Murhi Alpheus, the headmaster of the Magic Academy. He spoke to Alpheus about someone he wished to enroll, but the predicament was that the individual was not a noble. Clump mentioned that the boy reminded him of Alpheus in his younger years. Curious, Alpheus asks if the boy in question was the blonde boy with blue eyes. Clump Ogent asked Alpheus if he still couldn't forgive himself. In response, Alpheus explained that the reason he was teaching children was to prevent anyone from growing up to be like him. He expressed concern, stating, "If he is similar to me, as you said, who can guarantee that he won't walk the horrific path that I did?" Alpheus said, "There is no effect without cause." Clump Ogent replied, "Fate, is it not? And you happen to be familiar with him as well. The kid you sent away behind the walls 4 years ago came back like this." Alpheus laughs and says, "I don't believe in fate. However, the talent that was lost due to the barrier of his status appeared once more in front of me after 4 years had passed. Is it really fate? I will admit Ariane Shirone into the academy." When Shirone entered the Magic Academy, he gulped nervously upon seeing Amy Karmis, the one who had bullied him during his childhood, who is also aware of his commoner status. Amy, after seeing the glimpse of Shirone, thinks that he is somewhat familiar. Amy Karmis, intermediate class rank 1. As the most popular girl of the intermediate class, she has been shutting down confessions from her seniors, juniors, and classmates. The model student amongst all model students. But the only person who knows her dark past is trying to be admitted. The headmaster brought Shirone at the testing center. He said, "Look closely at what the child is doing. When you enter the spirit zone, you will feel that the letters on the floor are different. And how do you feel about them will help us interpret the spirit zone's size, strength, flexibility, and disposition. So you just need to answer the teacher's question honestly." A child enters and was told by the examiner to enter the spirit zone. When the child entered the spirit zone, he was asked by the teacher what is the number that is the furthest away. The child answered 6. The headmaster told Shirone that the number 6 means the zone's diameter is 6 meters. After that, the examiner called Shirone's name. The headmaster told Shirone that he should not be overwhelmed and just show of his skills. Shirone replied, yes, and told the headmaster that he will do his best. Thad, the male examiner, wondered if this kid was the one undergoing the special screening the principal had mentioned. Meanwhile, Sienna, the female examiner, thought, what a peculiar choice. And he is quite old too. If he borrowed the House of Ogent's name, is his family not very famous? It seems to be the case where they discovered his talent a bit later. Well, he may have seemed special outside, but in this school, he will only end up being buried quickly. Shirone was asked by the examiner if he could use magic. Shirone replied, no, I did not learn anything yet. The examiner told him that it was fine and that for now he should enter the circle and enter in his spirit zone. Thad and Sienna took a deep breath, relieved that Shirone's case wasn't a severe instance of nepotism. Then Shirone enters the spirit zone. After he entered the spirit zone, he was amazed to see a lot of formulas floating. Thad said, now, Shirone, please tell us the number that is farthest away. But Shirone didn't respond despite being called by the instructor. Because of that, Sienna and Thad was somewhat disappointed for the no response. One of the teachers laughs and said, it seems he was embarrassed. The headmaster said, Shirone, you just have to answer honestly. We weren't ranking you against anything. We are just trying to find the best way to educate you. Shirone said, I do see a number, but it is so long that I cannot really read it. Thad said, you can't read it? It is not based on sight but something you feel. Shirone replied, no, that is not what I meant. I can feel it, but it is so long. Even now it keeps growing. Thad, who was somewhat annoyed at this time, exhaled and said, it is all right, so start with the first digit you can see. Shirone focuses to see what it is. Shirone saw a very long digit of numbers and the first 3 numbers is 3.14. Shirone tells the first 3 numbers to the examiner. Thad was confused, exclaimed, what? Sienna asks, Shirone, there is no 3.14 among the numbers that we set. Are you certain? Shirone replied, is that so? But that is what I see. Hearing that made Sienna think, really? Of course, there are a few cases where the pi ratio shows up. It means that the zone's size has exceeded the range that we set up. Did he really exceed 30 meters? One examiner asks Shirone what color does he feels the strongest for. Shirone replied, it is blue. It is entirely washed blue. Then the examiner starts to murmur. They said, if it is blue, isn't it the convergent type? But his zone is still that large. The convergent type endurance is better than the size of the zone, opposite of the divergent type. The headmaster was also shocked by what he heard. In his mind, Clump, I can see why you were so adamant about this. But this isn't just at the level of a decent talent. Another examiner asks Shirone about the number of spheres floating around. Shirone starts to wonder, is he asking about these things? There is no need to count each individual one since I can feel it. He told the examiner that there were 867 of them. The examiner was shaking while writing the 86.7% density in his personal sheet. For the headmaster, what Shirone was shown was a little bit dangerous. Sienna Oliver, a certified rank 6, took a liking at Shirone and suggested that he should be put in the class 5 that she was managing. But the other teachers, including the headmaster, agreed that Shirone will be allocated in class 7. Magic schools have a system with 10 classes depending on the evaluations. Students are split into classes of 10 different levels, but these classes can be categorized into 3 groups. Classes 10 to 8 are elementary level, and those students are educated with focus on developing the spirit zone. Classes 7 to 4 are high-ranking classes, where students learn proper knowledge for using magic and how to use their spirit zones. Finally, the graduation classes, which are made up of classes from 3 to 1. They face severe training to produce several professional mages. Shirone entered one of his classes. The teacher at that time is Athela Romy, an intermediate class spirit zone specialist teacher who is also a certified rank 6. She told Shirone to introduce himself and greet everyone as the new student. At that time, students already heard rumors about the scores of Shirone in the entrance test. For Shirone being called out, it was a very dangerous turn of events, but he still introduced himself. On the other hand, in Amy's mind, it is my first time hearing his name. Who is he? He seems familiar. I am sure I would have saved most faces in my red eye. But while using her red eyes to remember the faces in the past, she starts to remember something that made her hair to stand up. It was the boy in the past that she bullied. She could only curse a word after she remembered that. The Karmis house is admired as the bloodline of geniuses. Their unique ability, red eyes, is said to be passed down to only Karmis descendants. This gives them the complete ability to completely remember specific moments they were in. As such, this makes the concept of reviewing pointless to them. The Karmis' youngest daughter, Amy, was evaluated to have the best talent among them all. For Amy, everything seemed so lame and boring. She wants to achieve just as much without the help of the Karmis house. She wants to do whatever she wants and whenever she wants something to do. That is why she sometimes goes out to watch those thugs fighting. The incident that made Amy, who had gone astray, return home was the coincidental meeting with a commoner boy back in the alley. That boy is now in front of her introducing himself. For Amy, there is no way that the memory she stored in her red eyes could be wrong. She thought that he was a noble, but now she was sure that Shirone was a peasant all along. But she starts to question, how did Shirone get into the Magic Academy? To Amy, that past was extremely embarrassing. In her mind, I want to die. I cleaned up my past to the point that not a speck of that remained. There is no way that he remembered that day, right? Amy was worried that Shirone might spread rumors about her, claiming she is not the type of person everyone thinks she is. 5 years ago, she used to hang around with back alley delinquents, you know? She actually has a lot of interest in men because she tried to take off my clothes. Thinking about that, she tore off the page of a book. In her mind, no, never. I will not accept this misunderstanding. I must stop it from happening. However, during the demonstration, Shirone was able to demonstrate an amazing feat. On his first try, he was able to manifest a large diameter of spirit zone, which made everyone amazed. At that moment, Amy was speechless, and the atmosphere around her turned darker. In her mind, how could I forget that Punk is the root of my humiliation? Seeing as how he could make it all the way here, he definitely has a supporter. He will be able to flip the difference in class soon enough, and his influence will only grow larger. I am changing plans. I need to approach him secretly. After one of Shirone's classes, there is some random person who was flying and holding Shirone. That person who kidnapped Shirone was actually Amy Karmis. Looking at the expression of Shirone, Amy Karmis cast a fire spell. She said, "That expression. So you do remember who I am, just as I suspected, right? I should just take care of things right here." But in reality, at that time, Amy only wanted to clear up the misunderstanding. She told Shirone that she did not order those thugs to take off his clothes. In that moment, Shirone was confused, questioning in his mind if the reason Amy kidnapped him was just to explain her side. However, Shirone suggested that they could forget everything with an apology, acknowledging that everything happened in the past. But at that time, Amy was thinking that Shirone was saying righteous things to make his opposition feel embarrassed and then scheming to exert his dominance. She believed that Shirone thought she was a pushover, attempting to engage in a battle of wits. But that was not the case at all. Since Amy didn't want to apologize, she threatened Shirone, asserting that the scariest individuals in the academy right now were the upperclassmen like her. She warned Shirone that if he got singled out by the upperclassmen, not only would other upper-level students become his enemies, but even his fellow classmates would turn against him. Moreover, if the fact that he was a commoner got out, his path to expulsion would be clear. With that, Amy informed Shirone that he would become her errand boy and instructed him to bring coffee to her every day. Before leaving, she warned Shirone that if he disclosed this information to their teacher, she would ensure that both of them faced dire consequences. Then, without further ado, Amy flew away. For Shirone, doing errands is better than expulsion, although he feels unfair that he needs to do whatever Amy wants. He could only take a sigh because it was already this tough just from the start. On the first day, Shirone brought coffee to Amy. Many students who were watching thought that Shirone was confessing to Amy. For Amy, it was exhilarating to witness Shirone experiencing the humiliation she had imposed on him. She believed that regardless of what Shirone said about the rumor, no one would listen to him. From then on, for 10 consecutive days, Shirone gave Amy a cup of coffee. As a result, the number of spectators increased, and Shirone was labeled as the Academy's pure-hearted romantic, with people saying that she confessed for 10 days in a row without skipping a day. After that, Amy's friend, Shirelle, asks her, when is she planning to accept Shirone? Amy was confused and asked Shirelle what is she saying. Shirelle said, the rumors are rampant. Honestly speaking, you have never even given the other boys a glance. And yet you always accept Shirone's coffee. Everyone is ready waiting for the birth of the legendary couple. Shirone continued to give coffee to Amy, but in his mind, he hoped Amy would take it so he could leave immediately. Meanwhile, the spectators cheered, urging Amy to accept Shirone. Amy could only curse in her mind, turning red due to the sudden turn of events. Now this is the main part of the story. The students who are watching continue to cheer, telling Amy to accept him. Amy at that time was shaking while blushing. Looking at Amy, Shirone starts to question, why isn't she taking it? I need to go quickly back to the library. But Amy suddenly pushes the hand of Shirone, saying it was so really annoying. This made the coffee spill on the ground, and all of the female students who were watching, including Shirelle, shouted because of shock. She points her finger at Shirone and she said, did you think that if you kept bringing me things like this, my heart would be swayed? As a student, you should be studying. You should stop chasing after girls. Before leaving, Amy said, from now on, stop bringing coffee. In fact, stop bringing me anything. Shirelle apologized to Shirone for Amy instead. However, the spectators started booing Amy for what she had done, expressing that they thought she was being too harsh. Shirelle said, why are you like this? What are you going to do if weird rumors started popping up? Amy replied, why would I care? It seems as if he has nothing to do, and it will be over if I just advance into the advanced class. The spectators looking at Shirone took pity on him, saying that Shirone must have experienced emotional damage. But Shirone, who was picking up the coffee, starts to question his mind. Really? I don't need to do this anymore? Then he jumps out of happiness because he is now free. That evening in the library, Amy was cursing because of what happened. In her mind, I did all that to try and prevent the new student from making any weird rumors, but I ended up being the one who created them instead. It should be enough that I ended things before the rumors grow more rampant, but that is not what is important. The red eye of Amy Karmis. The academic naming of it is perfect self-memory. When activated, the ability allows the user to perfectly remember the state they were in during a specific event or time. For the past 10 days, Amy had been saving all of the images of Shirone completing his coffee deliveries. On the first day, his reactions were funny, and it was actually quite fun for Amy, but it changed as days passed by. In Amy's mind, on the other 9 days, that punk's eyes didn't even flinch a single time. In fact, even his irises didn't even move. What could this possibly mean? No matter how much you try to hide your inner feelings, you can never truly hide that glint in your eyes. After all, you can't control your automatic nervous system. But if that were possible, that would mean he can control his emotions like a machine. Or he was completely being sincere. Amy flips the book that she is reading, and Shirelle asks him if she is going already. Amy replied yes, since she is too exhausted already. Shirelle said, if you are going to go, I will go too. Amy replied, no, there is no need for you to go so far because of me. I can go alone. Shirelle said, just as I thought, not receiving Shirone's coffee is in your mind, right? Amy told her that it is not like that. Since Shirelle is worried, she told Amy that if there is something she wants to let out, she can do so with her. Amy expresses his thanks for that. While walking in the hallway, Amy was complaining that she was too exhausted. In her mind, since it didn't go as planned, my mind is in a mess. I should get some rest. Then when she opens the door, there is some guy waiting on her. This guy was Jake Ardius. He said, I see you ended early, Amy. I thought that I would have to wait until midnight. Amy asks, why would you wait for me? Do you really have so little to do? Jake replied, don't be like that. I heard rumors. I heard a poor kid named Shirone is sticking to you. At that time, Amy's head was hurt from exhaustion from using her red eyes. She said, no way. Did you come chasing after me just to make fun of me about it? Jake offers her a coffee and replies, how could that be? Here, take this. It is the highest quality of civet coffee that you cannot get anywhere in the academy. The renowned Amy should be receiving at least this much. Amy, who was confused, asks Jake what is he doing. Jake replied, as you can see, I am courting you. Rather than that poor kid, someone like me who will succeed my father as the Royal Financial Executive Officer is much more fitting man for you, right? Amy told him that she was not in the mood to play along with his disgusting jokes. Jake, who was confused, asks him what does she meant by disgusting. Amy said, "Are we even close enough to have a conversation like this? Your research group has constantly been trying to knock me down a peg. Did you think I wouldn't know?" Jake starts to make his excuses. He said, "Wait a minute. I think there has been a misunderstanding. No matter what you may think, your tone and voice is a bit problematic, no? Disrespecting me is the same as disrespecting my household. An attitude that looks down on the honor of my household is something I cannot accept. You agree as well, no? Since you are from the famous Karmis." Hearing that, Amy starts to provoke him. She said, "Freaking pathetic guy. Are you unable to think straight just because you have a tiny popularity at this school? You are an impotent little sheet who cannot do anything without the backing of your household. Someone like you, who makes a weird sheet research group just to bully other children, speaks of honor." Hearing that hit the nerve of Jake. He shouted, You may act cocky because you are a first class, but who among the Karmises has any authority? Your name might be on the top, but you got no power to back it." Jake added, "With the power of my household, we can kill off a household at the Karmises level with just money. How is it? Do you finally understand?" Looking at the eyes of Jake, Amy was able to think about something. She said, "Oh, now I get it. That is right, only cowards have eyes like yours. Unlike Shirone's, your eyes look like a dead fish." Because of that, Jake said, "What? Are you saying that I am worse than that poor kid? Aha! That's it. I got the order wrong. I should have eliminated the obstacle in the way first before trying to woo with you. That sort of bastard. I can make sure that he won't be able to use magic within a day. I will show you how impressive I am." Hearing that turns the mood of Amy into something dark. Then she smacked the coffee that Jake was going to give her. Looking at the cup of coffee that Jake put an effort to break just like that made him angry. He shouted, "You cocky girl, just because you are a little pretty." Before he could finish his sentence, Jake felt something ominous. It was the dark aura of Amy and the four-way formation that she created. Amy, like a god of death, asks him, "Who will you do what to?" This is what happened when you threaten the man of a waifu. Jake was shaking at that time and started to question his mind, wondering how Amy could form a four-way formation so quickly. He said, "Are you crazy? Don't you know that using magic here is a violation of the Academy's policies?" Amy laughs at Jake and she said, "A mere small fry like you will do what? At the very least, Shirone isn't a little sheet like you who only relies on their household. He is someone who can take responsibility for what he does. I bet within a half year, you won't be able to measure up to his toes." He could only curse Amy at that time. In his mind, she filled up the area with oxygen. "The moment I try to enter my spirit zone, she will instantly set me aflame. There is no way I can face off against the first place of the intermediate class. But I will definitely get this revenge for this humiliation." There is nothing that Jake can do but to act like a chicken and run away. He told Amy to wait and he will get his revenge. She remembered the time when Shirone said to her that he would take up those errands to build his credibility. Amy took a deep sigh. In her mind, "It has been a while since I have been so agitated. Why did I do that? Because he threatened him? Because I was scared about being revealed?" Amy looks at the spilled coffee on the ground. She said, Damn, he probably won't be showing up starting tomorrow. Well, at least my head feels cleared up." A few days later, the small ripple that Amy started returned to her as a wave. Shirelle brought the letter to Shirone while crying. What was written in there is that Shirone was kidnapped and that Amy must go to the training field at 6 p.m. There was also a warning not to tell the teachers about it or they would regret it. The one who wrote the letter put an alias of Black Magician. Shirone asks Shirelle, "So you are telling me Senior Amy went there to save me?" While Shirone was walking inside the academy, female students were murmuring. They said, "It is him, the guy who hit Senior Amy." It was too amusing to watch, but too bad now. Shirone could only take a sigh after hearing that. In his mind, ever since that incident 4 days ago when Amy spilled the coffee, how am I supposed to go about my day with my head up? Though it seems like this whole charade ended up earlier than expected. I thought she would try to bother me more. It should be fine for me to think that she eased up on her suspicions of me, right? While thinking, he saw Chanel, the senior whom Shirone didn't dislike at all. However, Shirone started to wonder why his senior, Chanel, was alone when she was always with his senior, Amy. He began to ask if something had happened. Shirone called Chanel, causing Chanel to react with shock as if she had seen a living ghost. This also prompted Shirone to shout. Chanel grabs Shirone's collar. She asks, "Why are you here? What about Amy? Where is Amy?" Shirone, who was confused, asks what does she means. Then Chanel put that letter near his eyes and said, "Look at this. Did nothing really happen?" Shirone reads the letter and he starts to ask, "What is this? So I was kidnapped? But more importantly, this black magician group. What the hell are they?" 30 minutes ago, there is a student who asks Amy if she is doing well. Amy, who was annoyed, said, "Who the hell are you? Who do you think you are speaking to? I already told you to buzz off." The messenger student laughs and gives the letter to Amy. He says, "It would be better for you to not act so cocky. Boss is asking to see you." Amy ignored that guy and she said, "It's fine. You just have to ignore people like him. That is why he is still stuck in class 5. The messenger student said, "He said that if I deliver this, you will start being more obedient. If you don't wish us to break your man, you should accept his invitation." Hearing this made Amy shiver, but Chanel, who didn't understand what the guy said, told Amy that his words sounded stupid and they should head to the library. After that, Amy suddenly grabbed and read the entire contents of the letter. She began to sweat, asking if they had really kidnapped Shirone. She remembers the time when Jake spouted something when he was triggered. In Amy's mind, it is that bastard's work. Jake, that bastard. Amy got angry and started to crumple down the paper. She shouted, "Damn, what do you want me to do? I have nothing to do with that kid." Then she proceeds to throw the paper. The guy bids his goodbye, saying that he was just a mere messenger. Chanel picked up the crumpled letter and read it. She shouted, "Black magician. These guys, aren't they a misconduct group? They are absolute trash who only bothers students who do well. But why did they suddenly kidnap Shirone? And what does that have to do with you?" Amy was silent and sweating. She was thinking that maybe because of that night that she couldn't hold herself back. Chanel said, "We need to let the teachers know about something like this. Not only Shirone, but even you may fall into danger." Amy was thinking and replied, "Tell the teachers, huh?" In her mind, of course, that would be the best answer, but this issue isn't that simple. If the teaching staff interferes in the process of discovering the truth, I would have to explain the relationship between me and Shirone. And if my past gets revealed, the fact that this guy is a commoner might also be revealed. She remembers the time that Shirone was begging on him in the past, saying that he didn't do anything, and if the fact that he was a commoner revealed, even that might happen again. Thinking about that moment shocked her. Amy gave her bag to Chanel and she said, "I will go there alone. If I don't return by 7 p.m., then go tell the teachers about this." Chanel asks, "What? Why? How are you going to go there alone? You don't even know how many will be there." Amy replied, "Sorry, it is because there is really a specific situation I am stuck in." With her bloody red eyes, she assured Chanel to not worry about her because even though there were 10 Jakes, they could not be compared to her. Going back to the present, Shirone asks Chanel if she is telling her that Amy went there to save him because for Shirone there is no way for that evil person to go there and save him. Shirone said, "Either way, you are saying she went there alone? Then what are you doing just standing here?" Chanel replied, "Amy said she had a specific reason why she had to do this. This was the first time she ever made this kind of request. She said we must wait until 7 p.m. Shirone was thinking about that specific reason Amy was referring to. In his mind, the 1-hour leeway is an insurance. The reason for not telling the teacher is to maintain her secret. It is connected to our secret. That ultimately means she went there alone in order to keep my secret." Shirone threw his things and told Chanel, "It seems that I must go there too. Senior, you should keep waiting there until the promised time." At that time, Chanel was confused and asked Shirone to wait for a moment. But Shirone runs as fast as he can. In his mind, if it is the 14th training field, it is towards the mountains. Will I be able to get there in time? Chanel grabbed Shirone and they flew up. She said, "How will you get there in time by running? It will be better if I go too. I am going to photonize." "Hold on." Shirone, who was confused, asks her, "What is that?" Then Shirone's body turns into light and they move at a faster speed that made Shirone shout. The students who saw the light starts to ask if what is that thing and who is the person using magic within the school. Chanel fly upward and told Shirone that it is dangerous since they can hit trees while teleporting, so she said they will start flying from there. After landing on the ground, Shirone was still shaking because he didn't have time to prepare himself, but Chanel run towards the 14th field. Shirone was vomiting from the motion sickness he experienced because of photonization. Chanel starts to ask questions, where is Amy, while running. Chanel said, no one is here. That is weird, right? We got here 10 minutes before the meeting period. Shirone replied, I think they changed locations. Since the location was exposed in the letter, they thought of this ahead of time in case the teachers were contacted. Chanel asks Shirone about what can they do about Amy. Shirone remains silent because the tactics of those guys are well planned and thorough. Many thoughts entered Shirone's mind, such as the secret past, his commoner status, and the possibility of expulsion. However, for Shirone, this wasn't the time to worry about his identity. In a way, he realized that Amy might end up in a situation far more dangerous than he had initially thought. Shirone said, Senior Chanel, go back and tell all of the teachers. Without me holding you back, you should be able to get there even faster than before. Chanel told Shirone that Amy told her that she should wait until 7 p.m. because she was in a certain situation. Shirone replied, it is all right. The situation is because of me. If I help, nothing will happen. So please go quickly. At first, Chanel was confused about what Shirone meant. Then it led to another misunderstanding. Chanel shouted, what? Amy's important situation is you? What is the relationship between you two? Is it really like the rumors? Are the two of you dating in secret? Why didn't I know about this? Shirone told her, we have no time left. The more time passes, the more dangerous things will get. Chanel replied, I got it. It is also dangerous for you, so you should calmly wait here. Shirone took a sigh, and he was somewhat thankful that it seemed like those guys were in the mountains, a terrain he is familiar with. Then he used Spirit Dive to scan the whole area. He was thinking of finding some traces, and then he found it. There are footprints in the area. He found 2 sets of fresh footprints, but it is cut off in the middle. He starts to question if they start flying. While tracing down the footprints, he heard sound waves emanating from a massive explosion. Seeing the rising smoke, he began to question what the hell was going on. On the other hand, while Amy was walking with that arrogant messenger, that guy throws a fireball at Amy. But Amy didn't flinch at all. He said, oh my hand slipped. I almost hit you with the vibrant fireworks I have been saving for your grand entrance, Amy. The male student magicians who are part of their group start appearing one by one. Those guys said, Mistress Amy actually showed up to reel in such a big fish, as expected of boss. Then the boss, who is Jake Ardius, slowly approaches from the back. He told his men sarcastically to mind their manners, saying that Amy is a very important guest. Even though Amy is surrounded by men, she doesn't show any signs of fear. She said, it seems there are way too many children with nothing to do better with their lives. Jake replied, did you actually show up alone? Is that punk really so precious to you to the point you would innocently follow the directions? Amy told Jake that there was no need to burn down the entire house just to catch a couple of rats. This hit the nerve of Jake. He said, how cocky, but with the number of peering eyes, you won't be able to do as you wish. This time, didn't come here without a plan, you see. Amy told Jake that she gave no sheets about his plan or whatsoever, and then she asked about the whereabouts of Shirone. Hearing that, all of them start to laugh so loud. Jake said, that punk is probably licking books in the library or something. He doesn't even have an idea as to what his girl will be experiencing soon. Then that messenger at the back jokingly said, oh book, I love you, lick and lick. But for me, what is wrong with licking the books when you sometimes do that when changing pages? Going back to the story, while those boys were laughing, Jake said, why should we care where that punk is? All of us here only care about you. All of them are going crazy. They want payback for what you have done to them. Of course, last night, you did something that made me quite unhappy. I will probably pay you back as well, so be prepared. After hearing that, Amy takes a deep sigh, and then she laughs and glares at them with her red eyes. She said, since Shirone isn't here, this just got simpler. Just as you said, with so many of you watching, things may become troublesome, but doesn't that just mean I need to eliminate you people? Seeing the bloodlust and red eyes of Amy, Jake started sweating and exclaimed that there was no way. Amy releases a fire spell at her back, and the one who is the first victim is the messenger who insults Shirone. That messenger guy was shouting, saying that it was too hot. Seeing Amy go wild made Jake run away. He shouted, that crazy girl. She really shot it out. Get your head straight and put out the fire. The target form is weak against large numbers. While flying away, Jake told his men to move quickly, but they should maintain their formations. But one guy who was also flying away was caught by Amy. The guy was confused about why he couldn't fly away, but suddenly a massive explosion occurred below him, causing him to be thrown away. Amy waves her hand to cast another spell. Then all of the spells were aimed at other magicians who were trying to escape. With her shining red eyes, Amy smiled and told them, "Who said you could do that?" Amy became like a fire goddess who was holding a fire spell in her hands, and then throw it away on the underlings of Jake. Many students were hit. One student could only take cover from the fires that area approaching them. He said, "Wait, you said it was a target form. How is her rotation speed so fast?" Jake realizes that they are in a dire situation. In his mind, what the hell is this? It is completely different from what I saw in the training grounds. Does she have a battle experience or something? Jake fly upward and creates a wind spell. In his mind, no matter the techniques, there has to be a weakness. To go against the target form, which involves horizontal rotation, I need to attack from the vertical axis. After flying in the blind spot of Amy, who was busy spamming fire spells, Jake throws a wind spell called Wind Cutter at the back of Amy. Looking at Amy, who was still busy and focused on releasing fireballs, Jake smiled, thinking that he would hit Amy at this time. But as the wind cutter neared Amy, she noticed it and glared at Jake with her red eyes. The wind cutter was easily evaded by Amy. Jake started to question how did she able to do it. Amy smiled at him and said, "It is called schema, you dumb bastard." Then Amy throws a spell called Fire Strike at Jake. Jake could only curse at that time, and the next thing that happens is Jake exploded in the air. As Jake was falling down from that hit, he was still cursing Amy. Amy, who was like an evil witch, slowly walked towards Jake. She smiled and said, "This is why your grades are so garbage. It is because you are wasting your time doing pointless sheets like this." Jake raised his hand and was aiming to release another random spell. He told Amy to not look down on him. Amy still walked slowly towards him. She says, "What are you doing? There is no use in struggling. I am not letting you go that easily." Suddenly, Amy felt an ominous glare from a random artifact. She began to question what the hell it was. Then, she sensed that her mana was being affected by it, and even her red eyes couldn't function. She started to shout in response to the unsettling sensation. All of them laugh, including Jake. He said, "Push harder. It took forever to catch her. Checkmate, you crazy wild cat. If you don't dispel your spirit zone, you will probably go insane. What you are currently experiencing is anti-magic." Amy cursed them, stating that they dared to use cheats by employing forbidden magic. What angered her even more was that her red eyes couldn't help her recover from the effects. On her weakened state, Amy was suddenly pulled by the wind magic of Jake. He laughs and said, "I have finally caught you, freaking girl. How are you? Don't you feel like accepting my proposal from yesterday now?" Jake became like a madman as he revealed his hidden knife. He said, "I feel that it would be in your best to answer carefully. Right now, I have the urge to commit a crime, you see." Amy angrily told him, "I am warning you now, if you actually mess with me, I will kill you." In Amy's mind, I can't get loose. Is it too much for a schema to handle? I did stop training it at the age of 12. Damn, I need to find a way. Jake embeds magic on the knife. He said, "Really? It seems you don't understand just what kind of situation you are in. Right. You are just tired of men, right? I will help you. If I mark up your face, I am sure the guys will stop clinging to you." He puts the knife near Amy's face and then laughs. He said, "Oh yes. This is what I wanted from the beginning. You should have been trembling in a fear like this from the start. Beg another chance. Beg. Say it." Amy could only close her eyes as the knife is approaching her face. In her mind, damn it, my strength is leaving me. So this is how Shirone felt in the past. But suddenly someone shouted, telling all of them to stop. All of them stop from what they are doing. When Amy looks at the person who was shouting, it was Shirone holding a stick pointing at Jake and his group. Shirone shouted, "Stop, you heinous punks." After hearing the noise of someone shouting at them to stop what they are doing, Jake slowly looks at him while cursing, and the one he saw is Shirone, who was panting from running a while ago. Jake asks Shirone if he is alone. When he realizes that the MC is alone, all of them start to laugh, saying that the prince has arrived and starts asking him what he can do by being alone. Seeing Shirone alone, Amy shouted at him. She said, "You idiot. Why would you come here alone?" But Shirone at that time was to focus on the enemy while pointing the wooden stick. In his mind, even if they outnumbered her, to think they would be able to suppress the person ranked first among the intermediate class. How? Anyway, Senior Shirelle should have called the teachers by now. I just need to buy time. Shirone starts to enter his spirit dive. He is thinking that since he had already beaten Ryan in a swordsmanship battle, maybe he can do it again. He shouted, "Let go of Senior Amy this instant." Jake laughs and replied, "Are you crazy? If we let her go, won't the two of you just attack us together?" While he was under the spirit dive, Shirone rushes to attack Jake and his group to save Amy. One of Jake's men asks Jake why that punk Shirone is just running towards them without even using magic. Jake laughs and tells his men to open a path so they can do that magic. While running, Shirone felt something strange. He was thinking that something is off. Then Shirone felt the anti-magic that Jake and his crew were using. He shouted in pain from the unpleasant sensation caused by the anti-magic spell while he was in spirit dive. Because of that, Shirone falls to the ground and Jake and his men start to laugh at him. Jake said, as expected of the prince, he wasn't a disappointment. What were you going to do with that thing? Amy, who was worried, shouted, "Get rid of your spirit zone immediately. It is anti-magic." Shirone continued shouting in agony from the effects of that anti-magic. He began to question what anti-magic was. Amy said, "You could end up being unable to use magic for the rest of your life. Get rid of your spirit zone. You can go insane. Can you hear me?" But at that time, Shirone was slowly losing his senses due to the anti-magic. Shirone was holding his head. In his mind, "My senses, it feels like they are drifting away. My consciousness feels like it is shattering." As his consciousness was slowly shattering, he remembers the time that his professor teacher Athela Romy said, "Mages need to be able to sustain their focus in order to stay alive in chaotic battlefields." The defense form is a form that prevents the spirit zone from collapsing against most attempts at disruption. Even under most physical impacts, it will not collapse. It will also have an effect on most mental magics. Shirone was bleeding at that time, but he was still thinking of ways to counter the anti-magic. In his mind, both anti-magic and the spirit zone are but waves at the end of the day. If I just raise the density of the spirit zone to the point it can pierce through. Shirone raised his hand and tried the thing that he had started to theorize to counter the anti-magic. The messenger underlings of Jake started to sweat, asking what Shirone was trying to endure. Jake smiled and arrogantly said, "Ha! Is he trying to act like he is a top student? You are just a new student. Increase the output of anti-magic." Amy, who was worried, shouted, "Give up, you idiot. There are too many of them. There is a limit to what you are trying to endure." But suddenly, the anti-magic couldn't penetrate the magic that Shirone created. They started to curse and ask questions. What is that thing? Shirone slowly stands up, and the anti-magic wasn't able to penetrate his mind anymore. He was planning to add more frames of magic that he created. Jake and his men start to panic. The messenger guy starts cursing, asking what Shirone is doing. One of the underlings told them that Shirone was just reflecting the anti-magic. Jake, who was also panicking at that time, said, "Don't be scared. Your emotions are interfering with the waves. Do you want to be hit by the anti-magic?" Shirone starts to walk slowly towards them, and the anti-magic that Jake and his underling were casting starts to be pushed through. One shouted, "Don't come any closer." And then he shouted as he was engulfed by the anti-magic. Then the anti-magic starts to spread and engulf Jake's men. They were about to go insane and were shouting in pain while asking someone to save them. Amy starts to wonder what the hell is going on since she cannot enter the spirit zone. She has no idea what is going on them. But suddenly, the wind spell that binds Amy starts to vanish. She felt that she could enter the spirit zone now and the anti-magic was gone. Amy looks at the spirit zone that Shirone created. She was starting to be amazed. In her mind, wow, no way, to think such a spirit zone could exist. Shirone was able to gather his senses now. In his mind, I can feel something wiggling under my feet. It is as if I am stepping on a tiny worm. As he saw his men fall down one by one, Jake couldn't believe at what happened and he was shaking at that time. Jake said, "This makes no freaking sense. Are you kidding me? We had 6 people on our side. How could we suffer a loss against a punny guy like him? Jake stands up and shouted, "Yeah, that Packer, he must be a student specialized in anti-magic. That must be why he was able to come to the school under a special recommendation. You think you can win against me in a magic combat?" Shirone and Amy were confused about what nonsense is he spouting. Jake starts to cast another wind cutter spell once again to attack both Amy and Shirone. Shirone was alarmed about it. For him, it was a big problem since he didn't know how to use any magic. Jake was laughing at that time and he was thinking about the part that he was about to cut. But before he could finish and do what he's planning, a sudden right-hand hook hit him in the cheeks, making him turn into a ballerina while being thrown away. It was the punch from Amy. But before he could gather his strength back to stand up, another punch hit him directly in the center of his face. Amy became a boxer like Ippo who continuously punched Jake left and right. She shouted, "It is over, you Packer. What were you going to do to me? Say it again. Say that sheet to me again, you freaking bastard." Shirone was trying his best to calm down his senior. He told Amy that if he kept punching and using her schema at Jake, that arrogant guy might die. But Amy didn't stop and continued to make him as her punching bag. Since Amy couldn't be stopped, there is no choice for Shirone but to grab Amy in her hips and pull her down. He tried to wake up Amy, but she didn't budge. To Shirone, Amy didn't seem to have lost consciousness. He started to wonder if Amy was just exhausted. But for me, Amy didn't move because I think he felt the D of Shirone. Just kidding. Going back, seeing that Amy didn't move, Shirone expressed his gratitude to his senior. He acknowledged that Amy had ended up in that state simply because she was trying to save him. After hearing that, Shirone felt that Amy flinched. Amy suddenly stands up, which made Shirone push to the ground from the recoil. Amy said, "I am so refreshed now. Seriously, you are so weak. I wondered what gave you the confidence to come here and fight." After feeling the pain in his stomach, Shirone was thinking that there was nothing good about Amy. Amy was somewhat of a tsundere type. She took a sigh and offered her hand to help Shirone. She said, "In any case, let's get out of here quickly. It would become a huge headache if we got caught by the teacher after all." Shirone told Amy that Shirelle already reported the incident to the teacher and he was the one who asked her to do that. Amy, who was shocked to hear that, said, "What? I already talked it out with Shirelle though. Why did you do that?" Shirone replied, "What was I supposed to do then?" That was a serious situation. Amy was somewhat problematic after hearing that. She said, "It is because you don't know how much of a pain in the head it is to get involved in the academy. Mages have a need to understand everything logically. There is no way they would gloss over something half-heartedly." Amy, who was annoyed, shouted, "Damn! Are you trying to get our secret exposed as well?" Shirone replied, "Is that a problem right now? We almost died just now." Jake, who was conscious at that time, starts to wonder what kind of secret is that. There was a light approaching at the back of Amy. Amy told Shirone that they needed to get out first and they will think about the rest later on. Shirone starts to ask, "Are we running away?" But the light magic from the photonization used by the teacher already appeared in the area. Amy wished for it to be a teacher who was old and wouldn't pursue the matter too much. But the ones that appeared were the two certified Class 6 mages. It was Sienna of the Ice and Thad of the Flames. Seeing them made Amy panicked. In her mind, "We are screwed. We have two of the most passionate teachers of the academy are here." Shirelle runs faster to ask about Amy, checking if she is okay and if there is anything wrong with her head. Amy replied, "This is nothing. Why did you come so quickly?" But while the two besties were talking with one another, Professor Thad cast a fire spell. While Professor Thad cast the spell to light up the area, Shirone was amazed about it. In his mind, "That is the fire sun magic. I heard that is a very advanced magic." But when the surroundings lit up, what the professor saw was the unconscious student lying on the ground. He was shocked and asked, "Wait, what is all this?" He angrily looked back at both Shirone and Amy, which made both of them shaken. But the professor was actually worried about Amy. Thad asks, "Amy, how could such a thing happen to such an exceptional student like you? Are you hurt anywhere?" Professor Sienna was somewhat annoyed at the action of Professor Thad. She goes to Shirone, the student she took a liking on. She said, "Shirone, I heard you guys were in danger. Could you explain what happened?" Shirone was about to explain what happened to them. But at that time, Jake was already standing straight and told everyone that he thought he could tell them everything. Looking at Jake made everyone question. Jake smiled and arrogantly said, "Honestly, I had requested a duel because of my own personal grudge. It is a common occurrence in the age of storm and gale." Professor Sienna looks at him and his underlings. She said, "A duel? I heard a letter threat is involved though and anti-magic was used, huh? You know the academy rules, don't you?" Even though he was at fault, Jake was still arrogant and wants to turn the tables by his reasoning. He said, "I had no choice but to use that because Amy was too strong. But just look, we are the ones who actually suffered a great loss. And in the first place, Amy was the one who first broke the academy rules and attacked us in the library. I only requested a duel because I was angry at her breaking the rules. I am sure that they are also hiding something. That is why they came here without reporting it to the teachers." Hearing that made Amy angry and she shouted, "What nonsense is that? You are the one who first threatened me in the library. I even heard that you kidnapped Shirone." Jake starts to point his finger at them. He says, "So, did we really kidnap Shirone? You were the one who first attacked us today, and even the person directly involved, Shirone, didn't report to a teacher about this. All the puzzle pieces are falling into place. The two of them are hiding something." Jake shouted, "Teachers, do you understand now? The two of them are the culprits." Amy could only tell that this guy was a jerk. On the other hand, Professor Thad was sweating and didn't know how to intervene. He smiled and told both Shirone and Amy to tell the teachers about the truth that they are hiding. In Jake's mind, do you get it now? How fearsome Black Magician is. I am thinking of raising the stakes this time. I don't care how much money is required. After I tenaciously dig and find out the secret you guys treasure so much, I will spread all the rumors around the regional newspaper facilities of the kingdom and the rest of the society." But a sudden change in the temperature happened. Sienna glares at Jake and snow starts to fall, which makes even Professor Thad and the others alarmed. Professor Sienna said, "Don't act so cocky, Jake. You and your friend use anti-magic. What is worse is that the anti-magic wasn't used with pure intentions but with the intention to harm others." The ice spell starts to grow stronger as Sienna was approaching Jake. She said, "You must have known that Amy and Shirone's mind could be destroyed or they might even lose their lives. I think this is enough reason for you to be expelled in the academy." Even with that threat, Jake is still arrogant as before. He laughs and said, "You are just a mere teacher. Do you have the power to expel me?" Professor Thad hurriedly goes to where Professor Sienna is and he whispers, "Teacher, the Artius family is the one that is supporting our academy. Without their support, the school will face problems. We would lose our salary too." But Professor Sienna was determined to punish Jake, who tried to harm her favorite student. She said, "Isn't it our role as a teacher to guide students onto the right path? If we can't do that, then it would be best for us to quit being teachers." Hearing that, Professor Thad could only cover his face. This bastard was still cocky as before. He laughed and said, "Great, let's see who among the two of us would be expelled. In the world, it all boils down to money. Everyone has to bow before the money. Teachers, you can both learn about the world this time around." After Professor Sienna hears that makes the atmosphere go darker, she points his finger at Jake and she said, "Before that, it seems there's something you need to learn first." When Professor Sienna raised her hand, a strong, cold wind appeared that even pushed Jake back. Shirone was amazed to see the new magic. However, Amy started to question how things had turned out like that. Professor Thad warned Professor Sienna, stating that she couldn't kill students. At this time, Jake was being surrounded by strong cold winds. Then, in an instant, a tower of spiky ice appeared. Jake was in fear and shouted, as those icy spikes were only a few centimeters away from piercing through his body. Shirone was amazed at what he saw. In his mind, amazing! It didn't even touch his clothes. That means she is able to exert fine control down to the molecular level. I guess there was a reason why they call her an ice magic genius. Professor Sienna calls Jake and asks him if he thinks that money can give him everything. Jake shouted, "Stop talking nonsense and release me." With a flick from Professor Sienna's finger, that spike of ice shattered instantly. This made Jake kneel to the ground while coughing. Professor Sienna said, "I know you have already hurt a lot of other students, but the academy has closed its eyes to your recent misbehavior." Jake replied, "That is probably because of my family's money." Professor Sienna said, "Don't be mistaken. The academy isn't a place that teaches you because we get money. In fact, we are teaching you lessons that even money can't buy. Jake asks him what is that. Professor Sienna replied, that is to dream. Don't you want to become a mage? Hearing that, Jake remembered the time when he had told Professor Sienna that if she let him advance into Class 5, he would thank her by becoming an amazing mage. He remembers the time that he was leading young aspiring mages into their path until they grew up. Professor Sienna told him to dream with your friends and to study together to become mages. Isn't that why you have come this far? Are you intending to trample on such a precious space with your own feet? Jake remains silent while looking at the professor. At the end, Jake started to regret what he is doing and bows down and asks for forgiveness. Shirone could only look up to the sky and ask what could be the most precious place. After that, Jake and the black magicians repented of their wrongdoings and started to dream of becoming mages once again. But that is a story that would take place way later after their treatment in the punishment room is done and after they paid for their wrongdoings. And in the end, the inevitable happened. Shirone and Amy were interrogated. Professor Thad asks, Shirone, why did you not report this matter immediately? If something like that happened, you should have reported it to the teachers. The fact that you went to save a senior who is of a higher class than you alone doesn't make all sense at all. Shirone remains silent and looks at Amy. In Amy's mind, yes, we can't hide this forever anyways. I don't know who the headmaster told this to. Amy answered them slowly. She said, all right, I will tell you the truth. Actually, Shirone is my boyfriend. Shirone looked at her and couldn't believe that she said that. And of course, the teachers including Shirelle was shocked about it. They shouted what, which was heard all over the academy. Then, a story of a beautiful heroine who was kidnapped spread. The heroine was crying for help, hoping someone would save her. The kidnappers were guys who had been dumped by the beautiful heroine. She was brought into the forest where no one could hear her cries for help. Then, a handsome prince riding a beautiful horse appeared and kicked down the kidnappers of the beautiful heroine. His movement was swift yet romantic, and he informed the beautiful maiden that he had come to save her. Then, he lifted the maiden, calling her by the name Amy. The male hero, Shirone, and the beautiful maiden, Amy, were about to kiss. In reality, the one telling the story was Shirelle, and the girls felt a romantic excitement after hearing that. They were amazed, exclaiming that it was so romantic. Shirelle proudly told everyone that it really happened and she saw it when it happened herself. Amy was actually at her back, heard everything, and was about to enter Super Saiyan mode. She shouted, Shirelle? Just what rumor are you spreading right now? You were reading a weird novel recently too. The rumors spread about the story of Amy and Shirone. The girls were so amazed and was excited by the story, but the male students were so jealous of Shirone. Amy said to her friend, Shirelle, do you want to die? You didn't even see anything. Shirelle laughed and replied, do I have to see it? You said you two were dating, then wouldn't the two of you have kissed? Shirelle smiled and said, it turned out great either way. Thanks to that, the annoying male students won't bother you anymore. Amy replied, that is true, it did turn out good. A few days before the present rumor happened, Professor Thad couldn't believe about the statement of Amy. He slammed the paper on the table and said, that is a lie, right? The Amy I know isn't interested in dating, right? Amy replied, to be honest, I met Shirone when I was young. To think we would meet again here, you can call it fate. Amy smiled while looking at Shirone, asking him to support her. Shirone was whispering to Amy what about the after effects, but Amy kicked his feet. Shirone smiled while scratching his head and told the teachers that everything that Amy said was all true. The teachers start to believe, because if that is the reason, that explains why he went to save her. For Amy pretending to date is better than their past being revealed. Shirelle was still excited about the love life of Amy. She said, I knew it was strange from the beginning. Seriously, Amy's a dummy. Today's a combined class. We can see Shirone. Are you going to see him after class today? Eat dinner together and then a library date? Amy told Shirelle that they were going to focus on studying as usual. In Amy's mind, there is so much to do, so I cannot waste my time on pretending to date. Shirone is doing well, living his school life normally. He is doing really well. No, I really don't like this.